prior to his first birthday and growing up in Chicago's infamous South Side urban ghetto, where gangs, violence, and inferior schools and student apathy contributed to a high school dropout rate of over 75%. Routinely suspended from school throughout elementary and middle school and expelled in the 10th grade from Chicago's De La Salle Catholic High School, yet Mr. Wynn overcame all of these challenges to go on and graduate with honors from Boston's Northeastern University as his family's first college graduate. Since graduating from college, Mr. Wynn has had a successful career in the public and private sector, co-founding a publishing company, taught middle school students in South Central LA, and students in the Los Angeles County Office of Education juvenile camps and schools. He currently serves as Chief Executive Officer of the Foundation for Ensuring Access and Equity in Marietta, Georgia, an internationally recognized expert in increasing student achievement, and the author of 26 books. Some of them we have with us today, and Mr. Wynn will be discussing his extraordinary journey outlined in his book, Follow Your Dreams, where he writes, where you come from not only determines where you come from does not determine where you are going, but only where you begin. I've known Mr. Wynn for a whole lot of years now. I think we stopped counting, but somewhere around the 80s, so however you count, that's 30 years. Okay, so we've known each other for a while. He's become a good family friend, and he is here actually today to speak tomorrow at our conference, which is called Keeping It Real, what parents, teachers, and community must do we want to close the achievement gap for minority students. So he is here to speak to that group tomorrow, but when I saw his plane, when he sent me his reservation and his plane came in at 10 o'clock, I'm like, you got time to speak at the college on Friday, okay? So we're going to hook up something for Friday. But anyway, I appreciate his generosity and his willingness to, not to mention he just flew into Atlanta from Bermuda yesterday, and he was here in Sacramento speaking at another engagement on Sunday. So, doesn't he seem really alert to have done all of this, all right? But anyway, he was very gracious in agreeing to do that, and so I am really honored to have you here today to share with our Solano College students. So let's give a warm Solano College welcome to Mychal.
Okay, good afternoon. I think what I'd like to talk about are the issues that are raised in the book, Follow Your Dreams, but here's the context that I'd like it to be in. I'd like you to think about your own journey, because the book really it just shares my journey. And each of us in the room, we have our respective journeys. And so even in the process of writing about my journey, just the writing process itself helped me to draw strength from that journey. So I'm going to share with you some of some images and some dynamics of that journey, but I want to tell you how the book came about. I do a lot of work in schools, talking with young people, trying to motivate them to plan for college and to take academics seriously. And years ago, I was in North Carolina, and I was speaking with a group of middle school students, and I was telling them about my life and what I had done and issues and obstacles I had to overcome. And one of the young ladies, she said, well, Mr. Wynn, when are you going to write a book about your life? I said, well, I had thought about it. She said, well, if you write it, I'll read it. Now, this was in November. Now, see, that's all, oftentimes, that's all that we need to plant a seed. So that was in November. When I went back to Atlanta over the holiday, the Christmas break, when my travel schedule is really light, I don't do anything but sit around and eat, get bigger, enjoy family. And in January, I had the book written. And then I sent her a copy, signed copy back to the school to inspire her. So the book was inspired by middle school students, but what I found over the years is that the journey that I've gone through is very similar to a lot of journeys that people have gone through. This photograph here is of me in middle school. Now, one of the things that was critical in my journey is that I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, and Chicago at the time had the lowest performing public school system in the country. And when I graduated from high school in Chicago, we had the highest murder rate in the country as a result of street gang violence. And the reason I have on the tie is that my mother, now my parents, They didn't have a lot of education. My father dropped out of school at the end of the 8th grade. He was part of this northern migration of blacks from the rural south to the north looking for work. And my mother dropped out of school at the end of the 10th grade to become part of that same migration, but she went to Chicago looking for my father. So they hooked up in Chicago, and despite not having a lot of education, they knew something was wrong. That I was coming home from school and it didn't seem like I was learning a lot. So what a lot of in urban communities happens is that families try to put the children in Catholic schools. That was the big thing in Chicago at that time, Catholic schools. Because Catholic schools could still spank you. So that was always a good place, to get you remotivated to learn. So I was at Corpus Christi Middle School, and that was a middle school picture. This was the quote that Dr. McCoy read. This is a quote actually from the back of the book, and that really, I think, the quote itself captures the spirit of this story. Where you come from does not determine where you're going, only where you begin. One of the things that I've seen over the years, talking with young people particularly, is how often we use our situation as an excuse not to do, rather than as a catalyst to do more. And so one of the phrases that my father left me with that's timeless, and for me, I've shared it with my own children, and I live by it, is what it is. I just had that conversation on an airplane coming in. Flying in from Atlanta, sitting next to a guy who used to work at Intel, and he one time had a house that was worth a couple of $1 million, and now it wasn't worth a couple of $1 million anymore. And he was talking about the economy, and as we were talking, we started reflecting. And whenever you have these conversations, you start reflecting. And one of the things that jumped right out of my mind is that 2 generations ago in my family, they largely lived in rural communities and they farmed. Well, what happens with farmers is that if one crop isn't growing, what do you do?
Plant something else.
That's right, talk to me. What do? You plant something else, right? You don't sit around and starve. You know, say, man, we can't grow potatoes this year. I guess we're just going to die. We're going to starve. I mean, what you do is we're not growing potatoes, man. Maybe string beans will work, or maybe strawberries will work, or maybe something. So it is what it is, and you have to respond. And so what my parents were trying to do is respond to public education not working and put me in Catholic school. And in doing that, it really helped me to reflect back on my life. And, where you come from doesn't matter, it's just where you begin. You got to decide what you're going to do with the hand that you've been dealt. And we've all been dealt different hands. So I write about that in the book. This pretty much captures where I was born. I was born in Pike County, Alabama, in what was largely referred to in the South as shotgun shacks. And, very small, you go in the front door, and you can see, if you take like 3, like hopscotch. Any of y'all play hopscotch when you were kids?
Yeah.
You take 3 steps, 3 hops, and you're out the back door. And the house that I grew up in didn't have running water, had a well outside, an outhouse. But as though that wasn't bad enough, then I was given up for adoption before I was 6 months old. And at that time, the country was segregated, so I couldn't even board an integrated bus. I had to get on a segregated bus to go from Pike County, Alabama, to Sharon Hill, Pennsylvania, where there was an underground adoption arranged with a young lady and her husband from Chicago, Illinois. And my mother said that when she got me, I was so malnourished, I guess, correctly stated. And she said I just cried and cried. She said my hair was all matted and nappy and all messed up. And I was dirty. But she said I was her prayer because she couldn't have children, so she prayed that she would have a baby, and I was it. So I went from here to Chicago. But then, man, we grew up poor on the south side of Chicago. So it wasn't as bad, but it was still in poverty. Here is what I have learned. And this is one of the big differences between my wife and I because of where I come from. Poverty is a zip code I can always go back to. See, if you grow up poor, that's strength in growing up poor. You learn how to do without. I mean, I remember, I'm probably older than most of y'all, so you may not remember the washing board. Just the board. And you just no washing machine, no dryer. You do the board, and then you take it outside and you hang it on the clothesline with the clothespin, and you let it air dry. So if my washer and dryer goes out today, I still know how to go back to the board and go out. Do you know that many of the young people growing up today, if the washer and dryer doesn't work, they don't know what to do. Mama, I'm going to be dirty I don't know what to do. So I go back to that. I go back to the time when you could do everything with the beans. Bean soup, puree beans, and then every kind of beans. Lima beans, butter beans, baked beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, chili beans, black beans. I mean, you can do everything with a bean. And I don't ever remember being sick when I was a kid because of the way that I ate. And so now, I love restaurants. One of my favorites is Ritz-Carlton. If you've never eaten at the Ritz, how many of y'all have never eaten at the Ritz? Just raise your hand. Okay. Before you die, you deserve to have a meal at the Ritz-Carlton. And if you want to pick a good one, pick the one in Buckhead in Atlanta. Just get on a plane, fly to Atlanta, go to Ritz-Carlton, because they make such a fuss over you. It doesn't matter how much money you made before you walked in the door. They treat you like royalty while you're there. And for me, growing up poor, sitting there, it was like, man, I'm looking around and saying, man, I made it. This thing's working. I'm having a good time. But after I leave the Ritz-Carlton, most of my family is still poor. I can go to Memphis, where most of my family lives, and eat chitlins and ham hocks. How many of y'all eat chitlins? Most of the nursing lady. See, that's what I'm saying. This is a journey. So what I'm writing, what I'm talking about is the journey. And all of us are going through our respective journeys. So that's where I started. This is my father. What I remember about my father is that, one, he was strong. He was a man of few words. He never helped me with an academic task. Never reviewed my schoolwork. Never helped me prepare for a test. Never went to a teacher conference. He was one of the parents that teachers today always talk about. Those parents are uninvolved academically. They don't help their children. He did what he knew how to do, and here's what he knew how to do. He told me I was going to college. He didn't ask me if I wanted to go to college. He didn't look at my grades and say, you look like you college potential. He didn't even call it, we say that how we're supposed to be so positive with our children. Tell them, you're going to become a doctor, you're going to become a lawyer. He didn't even call me that. He just said, boy, you're going to college. And he said it with such authority, he would take me to the barbershop in Chicago where all the black men with broken dreams and broken spirits would go every day. You know how people now, they watch soap operas all day long? The soap opera was in the barbershop. And so he would take me to the barbershop when I was about that big, and he would push me out there and say, tell that man what you're going to do when you grow up, boy. I said, I'm going to college. Now, I didn't know where college was. I didn't know what college people did. I didn't have a frame of reference, but I had a destination. That, perhaps more than anything else, taught me how to raise my own children. When my sons, I got two boys, when they were born, they were going to college. They didn't have a choice. Now, once they get their college, their first degree, they may not want to get a master's. I'm all right with that. They may not want to get a PhD. But you know what? That first degree, there's so much struggle in that journey that it gives you a fuller appreciation for how hard you can work, how much you can do. And oftentimes, you're surrounded by people a lot smarter than your friends when you grew up anyway. Any of you ever recognize that? And when you're in your college classes, you're surrounded by people a lot smarter than some of your girlfriends, when you're hanging out, and some of the guys you're hanging out with. I don't know about where y'all grew up, but I'm telling you, when I grew up, once I got to Northeastern, I was around some of the smartest people on the planet. I had never met people that's brilliant. I met people from Ethiopia, China, Japan, and Kenya, and they were coming just brilliant. People I grew up with, they could put together a sentence. They were all right. These people were putting together scientific equations and creating things, so it was significant. So he told me I was going to college. He encouraged me again. What he always said was, it is what it is. What are you going to do with what you got? It is what it is. Dad, I don't have the shoes that those other kids got. It is what it is. Dad, but everyone, because I was growing up, was Chuck Taylor sneakers. Everybody has Chuck Taylor. I don't have any Chuck Taylors. Son, it is what it is. You better run in your brogans and make it look like that Chuck Taylor. And I said, but Dad, they got, because in Chicago, the best suit you could have, it was silk and wool. It shined. You know, they were cleaning, and I didn't have a suit. He said, son, whatever you wear, just look good in it. And so, he really helped me to understand this really important thing in terms of my life. Not to whine. And Karen has known me a long time. And she knows, I should say, in public, I should probably call you Dr. McCoy. I knew you before you were Dr. McCoy, but, I'm in public, so, Dr., and we're being videotaped. Dr. McCoy knows that I don't whine. I don't complain. That's just not me. I just call it like it is. Running a business, being an entrepreneur, there are so many days when you are just broke. I mean, you look in the bank, you got like 60 cents in the bank account. No one will pay you. And I'm a publisher. And this is a tough time in the country for publishers because all the bookstores are going out of business. And you know what? Ask yourself this. I want you to think about this next time you go. You all seen Borders, right? You all know Borders is in bankruptcy. And you all know the Borders, they have books, 90% off, 80% off. You've seen that, right? So as a consumer, you go and say, man, this is great. I'm getting a $30 book for like $3. Here's what happened. Some publisher published that $30 book, and Borders filed bankruptcy, and they're not paying that publisher what they owe them. So the publisher is now filing bankruptcy because they can't collect their money, and Borders is selling the book. So it is what it is. So for me, there was one issue that I have being adopted. And they say adoptees tend to be one or two extremes. Either they go through their life with this burning passion to find their biological family because they have a question. Why did you give me up? What was wrong with me that forced you to give me up? And then there's the other extreme. I don't care. The other extreme is I am going to become so successful that if you know you gave me up, you're going to be called and say, yo, made a mistake, we're sorry. Can you hook your family up? So I'm at that other extreme that I've never looked back. I've never had the need to go back to Pike County, Alabama to find out because my life, he was my father and my mother was my mother, and they did what they did, and it really put me in a good place. So that part of my journey was, this is what I looked like when I graduated from high school. And again, when I graduated from high school, now I attended one of the lowest performing public high schools in the United States. We had 500 ninth graders, and we had 50 graduate to 12th grade. We had 450 students who either dropped out, were a victim of homicide, or incarcerated, or some other way just became absent from the educational system. So we only had 50 who graduated to 12th grade, and I was one of the 50 with my afro because of that man who told me when I started the process that I was going to college. Pardon me. You will see that story in everything that I write. When I write about college planning, one of the most important pieces of advice that I give to parents, you need to affirm the educational outcomes for your own child as soon as they're born. And you need to reinforce that every single day. And many, we get it, as my wife is fond of saying, we get it twisted in education. When we start talking about, not everyone is college material, and, maybe some people should go in a different direction. None of us. It would be unconscionable for anyone in this room to send a child to kindergarten and to say, well, maybe he's not suited for first grade. Have you ever thought about that? Will any of you send your children to school and then at the end of elementary school say, you know what? Maybe he's not cut out to be a middle school student. We wouldn't do that. At the end of 12th grade, we know this. We know so little that some type of post-secondary experience is really important.